So my story really began when a Catholic priest in full Roman Catholic vestibules walked into my grandmother's house on a mission from God to marry my mom. And the God-loving Portuguese woman my grandmother is handed her daughter off to this Catholic priest. My mom discovered my dad's secret, and she was traumatized, and so was I. My parents had split up when I was 3 years old. I didn't have my mom, and my father didn't have the paternal instinct. So really, I lacked that nurturing as a child. My mom lost custody of my sister and I because of my mother's alcoholism. And we went to go live with our father. And my father didn't abuse my sister and I sexually, but there was a lot of emotional, mental abuse. He had his own deep mental illness issues. So I never really bonded with my dad at all. It was always a fight with him. I never felt like home was a safe place. So that's where I found my relief, on the street, to using drugs and alcohol. I picked up my first joint at 11 years old, and from there I experimented with other drugs, but I really met my match at about 17 years old with OxyContins. I was using $500 a day worth of the OxyContins, and I came to a point where I lost my soul, where they took away my soul. And I knew that if I didn't stop using these drugs, I was gonna die. So for the first time in my life, I reached out for help. I reached out to my mom and said, "Mom, I can't stop doing these pills." So she took me to the doctors, which I agreed to. After he examined me, and he said, "All right, you're ready to go." And I said, "Ready to go where?" And he said, "To detox." And I said, "I'm not going to detox." Because in my mind, only losers went to detox. So I left that day, and I went out and I got some methadone on the street. And I played doctor with myself for a little bit, but I weaned myself off. And I haven't touched an opiate 16 years later. I was 30 days clean. And at that time, the Catholic abuse scandal came out. And there were allegations in the newspaper that my dad had inappropriate relationships with minors when he was in the seminary. And that was a tough one for me. That was so difficult. The shame I felt, the connection to a pedophile priest, which was my father. It was unbearable. And when that came out, at 30 days being clean, I knew if I could stay clean through this, I could stay clean through anything. And then 2 years later, I was still at that point using other substances, smoking grass, drinking booze. And then I hit a depression. And what got me completely sober was the pain inside. I was scared of my thoughts. I was having homicidal, suicidal thinking, and I was scared of it. And for the second time in my life, I reached out for help. And my mom was there once again, and she introduced me to a 12-step recovery program. I showed up, and I identified with the speakers right away. I identified with the anxiety, with their depression, with their impending doom, with their pain inside. But I said to myself, I'm not an alcoholic. So I left that 12-step meeting, and I went out, and I drank again. And I woke up the next morning crying at the foot of my bed with the same feelings, depressed, anxiety, the impending doom, the feelings were overwhelming. So I reached out again to Mom, and Mom said, let's go to another meeting of the 12-Step Fellowship. So I showed up, and there I saw a friend who I used to run with back in the day. And I was surprised to see him. And I was like, what are you doing here? And he's like, oh, I've been clean and sober for like 2 years. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah, come along with us. Life early in sobriety was amazing. I met all these beautiful guys and gals who were being cops and firefighters and owning their own businesses and who were, full of life per se. And life really began to take on for me. It began to bloom. I left the construction world. I got into corporate America. I'm in this company, I'm making 6 figures a year. I bought my first house, first multifamily, and I spent hours renovating it. And then I would go straight to work after I renovated it, or I renovated till 3 in the morning, and then, wake up and go to work for 8 hours and come back and do the same. And while I was doing that, I got sick. And I went to the doctors, and they did what they needed to do, and I got the diagnosis of universalis ulcerative colitis. So the doctor put me on some anti-inflammatories, told me to take some prednisone, so I did. And I got into remission, and at that point, I was still in the gym twice a day, still building up all my armor, still trying to chase the external things. And I was digging myself a hole because I couldn't relax. I couldn't stop the running. So I was trying every medication that you could possibly take for ulcerative colitis, which is an autoimmune disease. I began to develop severe symptoms. And one of them was I was beginning to develop a sensitivity to the environment, a chemical sensitivity. My nervous system was in hyperarousal. They did my blood work and realized that my liver enzymes were through the roof. At which they said, whoa, 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 you have to get off this drug right now and go see a hepatologist. And I was so scared because nothing ever worked besides this drug. So I went to the hepatologist and he had to do a liver biopsy. And they realized that I was developing autoimmune hepatitis. So I'm sitting on the bed of this examination room, and all of a sudden the doctor comes in and tells me if I don't do something about this, then I may need a liver transplant in 8 years or so. So I left there with the prescription that they gave me to bring down the enzymes, in which that prescription drug did so. And since that day, I've never stepped foot back in Western medicine. Now, I'm not anti-Western medicine. I'm just saying it didn't work for me at the end. So here I am, I've developed this chemical sensitivity, which I can't even tolerate perfumes, diesel fuels from cars or gasoline. The smells were so intense, they would throw me in fight or flight. And the thoughts that would come from being triggered were just horrific. Thoughts of not wanting to live this way anymore. And at some moments, I contemplated taking my own life. To calm me down, I began to practice meditation. I began to listen to that inner voice. And I began to calm my nervous system down by the breath. And in doing so, my mind began to settle. And I began to tap into a deeper sense of reality. What I mean by that is I began to experience the deeper sense of wisdom and truth that's in all of us. I began to get in touch with that Christ consciousness or that Buddha nature or that Atman. It's all the same place, it's just different words, where my body dropped and I had a beautiful heart opening and I was in touch with the suffering of the world. And that was a very blissful, beautiful experience. And it's one that shifted every cell in my body. And I began to turn towards myself and begin to nurture myself like a mother nurtures her child back to health. And I had to treat myself with the best food, with the best supplementation, with gentle yoga, with gentle exercise, with spending time in nature. So I had to walk this path little by slow, and be very patient in the process. And what's so beautiful about all of it is that it births my purpose. It's not what happened to me, it's what I chose to become. And now today, I chose to become someone to help other people. And if you would have asked me, would I live all of this again to experience what I have experienced, I would. There's nothing that can compare to how I feel inside today. Today I'm able to open my heart to another human being and give and reciprocate love. And that's a big shift from how I grew up. That's healing.